Ethan Carter took a deep breath of the fresh morning air in Volcanoes National Park. A thin mist blanketed the rainforest, with gentle rays of sunlight piercing through the dense canopy, creating a scene that was both mysterious and comforting. He pulled his thick jacket closer, feeling the chill seep into his skin. It had been 12 years since he last set foot in this place, but the sense of connection to the wild remained as strong as ever. Memories flooded back, tightening his chest. He remembered the wide, innocent eyes of Kendra, the young gorilla he had rescued during a patrol years ago. Kendra was orphaned, having lost her mother to a cruel poaching incident. Back then, she was just a fragile, trembling, and frightened little creature. With his experience and love for wildlife, Ethan had poured his heart and soul into caring for Kendra, nurturing her from a weak, helpless gorilla into a strong, vibrant individual. But as time went on, Ethan's work required him to leave Volcanoes National Park, a place he had once called his second home. Kendra, now grown, was returned to the wild to join a group of gorillas. Although he knew it was the best thing for her, Ethan couldn't stop his heart from aching at the separation. In the years that followed, Kendra's image remained vivid in his mind, as though she were a piece of his soul that he had left behind. "Are you all right, Dr. Carter?" A gentle voice broke through his thoughts. It was Dr. Olivia Novak, a young researcher with sharp eyes and a warm smile. Olivia was renowned for her in-depth studies of gorillas in the area and had spent years observing the group Kendra was now part of. "I'm fine," Ethan nodded, offering a faint smile. "It's just so many memories coming back." Olivia smiled sympathetically. "I understand. Returning to a place that meant so much is always overwhelming. But I believe Kendra, if she's still here, will remember you." Ethan looked at Olivia, his eyes filled with doubt yet tinged with hope. "Do you really think so?" Olivia nodded firmly. Gorillas have excellent memories, especially for individuals they share a deep bond with. Kendra is no exception. The two began their trek deeper into the forest, their steps light to avoid disturbing the natural surroundings. Olivia led the way, notebook and camera in hand, while Ethan followed, his eyes scanning the scenery. Every step seemed to draw him closer to a part of his heart that had long lain dormant. Ethan reminisced about those early days of caring for Kendra. Back then, he had spent countless hours each day helping her eat, learn to communicate, and slowly regain trust in humans. The little gorilla often clung tightly to his hand, her deep black eyes brimming with dependence. Those moments were not just work. They were lessons in love, patience, and connection. "You're thinking about Kendra, aren't you?" Olivia asked, her gaze still fixed ahead. "Yes," Ethan admitted. "When I left, I didn't think I'd ever have the chance to see her again. But now, I just hope she's all right. And maybe, just maybe, she'll remember me." Olivia stopped, turning to him with a gentle look in her eyes. "Hope is a precious thing, Dr. Carter, and sometimes, nature has a way of bringing miracles we can't anticipate." The pair continued deeper into the forest, where the sound of birdsong and rustling leaves created a vibrant symphony. Ethan couldn't help but feel his heart race at the thought of seeing Kendra again, the creature he had poured his heart into loving. 12 years ago, Ethan Carter received an emergency call in the middle of the night. A park ranger in Volcanoes National Park had discovered a young gorilla curled up beside her mother's lifeless body. The mother was a victim of illegal poaching, a cruel reality Ethan had faced countless times in his career. But this time felt different. When he saw the little gorilla, her wide, frightened eyes filled with loss and confusion, his heart sank. He knew he wasn't just saving a wild animal. He was facing a living being in desperate need of love and care. The young gorilla was named Kendra, a name symbolizing hope and strength. However, the first days of caring for Kendra were a monumental challenge for Ethan. Kendra refused to eat, avoided contact, and often curled into a corner of her enclosure, her eyes filled with fear and distrust. Ethan understood that losing her mother had caused not just physical pain but also deep emotional wounds. Seeing the frail, trembling creature, he couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of sorrow. He resolved not to give up, no matter how difficult it became. Ethan spent hours each day sitting near Kendra, speaking softly to her, telling meaningless stories just to create a sense of safety. He didn't force her to interact, giving her time to adjust to his presence. Slowly, his patience began to pay off. One morning, Kendra looked up at him without turning away. It was their first real connection, a moment that marked the beginning of a bond that would last for years to come. Small milestones started to emerge, and each one felt like a major victory. Ethan taught Kendra to reach out her hand for a milk bottle, a seemingly simple task that required immense trust from the little gorilla. At first, Kendra only stared at him warily, but with each gentle attempt, her trust began to grow. One day, she extended her hand and touched the bottle for the first time. Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of joy, as if he had broken through an invisible barrier separating them. From then on, their relationship deepened. Kendra no longer feared Ethan's presence and even began seeking him out. Small gestures, like resting her head on his shoulder or holding his hand during walks in the sanctuary, brought Ethan a warmth he couldn't describe. He realized that in Kendra, he had found not just an animal in need of rescue but a friend, a member of his family. Each passing day strengthened their bond. For Kendra, Ethan was the only being she could trust after her immense loss. For Ethan, Kendra was a beacon of light in the darkest period of his life. After losing his wife in a sudden car accident, Ethan had drowned in grief and loss. Working in wildlife rescue kept him busy, but it was caring for Kendra that truly helped him heal. Through nurturing the young gorilla, he learned to mend his own broken heart. He realized that no matter how great the loss, life carried on, and love could thrive even in the harshest circumstances. Kendra wasn't just a rescued gorilla. She became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of connection. Ethan would never forget the moment Kendra smiled. A small, subtle expression he never thought he would see in a gorilla. That smile wasn't just a sign of her recovery. It was proof of how profound love and compassion could be. As Kendra grew older, Ethan knew that one day, he would have to let her return to the wild. That was the ultimate goal of any rescue program, to help wildlife reintegrate into their natural habitat. But that didn't make the goodbye any easier. On the day Kendra left the sanctuary, Ethan spent the entire morning sitting with her, stroking her soft fur and saying his farewells. Kendra, now a strong, grown gorilla, looked at him with deep, understanding eyes, as if she knew what was coming. When the enclosure door opened and Kendra stepped into the forest, Ethan couldn't stop the tears from streaming down his face. He knew he was doing the right thing, but his heart felt as if it were being torn apart. Watching Kendra walk into the trees, Ethan felt both proud and empty. From a fragile orphan, Kendra had become a strong, capable individual ready to face the world. And though he would no longer be by her side, he knew their bond would never fade. Kendra wasn't just a gorilla. She was a part of his heart and soul. Ethan Carter and Olivia Novak carefully treaded the narrow trails of the lush green forests of Volcanoes National Park. They kept their footsteps light, mindful not to disturb the serenity of the surroundings. Olivia paused for a moment, examining tracks on the ground, fresh gorilla footprints and crushed leaves, signs that Kendra's group was close. Ethan tightened his grip on his backpack, a mix of excitement and anxiety swelling within him. After 12 long years, he was about to see Kendra again, the gorilla he once considered family. "They're just ahead," Olivia whispered, her voice a blend of professionalism and quiet excitement. "We should move slowly so we don't startle them." Ethan nodded, taking a deep breath. His heart raced as they approached the group. Soon, they spotted Kendra's family, a troop of 12 gorillas living peacefully in their natural habitat. A few juveniles played near a thicket, while the larger adults lazily munched on leaves. But Ethan's eyes were immediately drawn to the imposing figure at the center. a majestic silverback with a striking streak of silver fur running down her back. It was Kendra. Ethan couldn't take his eyes off her. Kendra was now a fully grown adult. No longer the tiny gorilla he had rescued. She exuded confidence and authority. With the calm demeanor of a true leader, Ethan's heart tightened with both pride and emotion, seeing how far she had come. "That's Kendra," Olivia whispered, her eyes sparkling. "She's an incredible leader." Ethan didn't reply. He crouched slightly, his eyes fixed on Kendra. He knew he needed to be cautious, though Kendra once shared a deep bond with him. 12 years was a long time. She was now a silverback, a leader, and he wasn't sure if she would remember him. "Hey, big girl, do you remember me?" Ethan called softly, his voice trembling. Kendra didn't respond immediately. She turned her head toward Ethan, her deep, intelligent eyes locking onto his. In that moment, time seemed to stand still. Ethan froze, afraid to move, as if even the slightest motion might break the fragile connection. Then, something extraordinary happened. Kendra tilted her head, a gesture Ethan recognized instantly. It was the same way she used to tilt her head when she wanted to ask him something or seek his attention. She tilted it again, then slowly raised one arm, a movement they had shared years ago when he taught her to reach for a milk bottle. Ethan's eyes filled with tears as he stepped forward cautiously, his voice breaking. "Kendra," he whispered hoarsely. "It's me, Ethan. Do you remember?" This time, Kendra's reaction was unmistakable. She let out a deep, resonant sound, a low rumble that young gorillas often use to seek comfort from their mothers. Ethan immediately recognized it. It was a sound of recognition, of affection, and perhaps, of memory. Kendra began to move toward him, her steps slow but deliberate. Olivia stood frozen behind them, completely stunned by what she was witnessing. As a seasoned researcher, she had never seen anything like this, a bond so profound between a human and a fully grown silverback. When Kendra reached Ethan, she stopped, staring deeply into his eyes as if searching for pieces of a long-lost memory. Then, in a move that took Ethan's breath away, she extended her large hand and placed it gently on his. It was a silent but powerful gesture. Ethan felt the warmth and weight of her hand, and in that moment, he was transported back to the past, to the days when her tiny hand would cling to his, seeking comfort and safety. "Oh my God," Olivia murmured, her voice filled with awe. "She remembers you." Ethan couldn't speak. Tears streamed down his face as he looked at Kendra. "I missed you so much, big girl," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "You've grown so much, and I'm so proud of you." Kendra responded with another low rumble, as if acknowledging his words. Her hand remained on his, and they stood there, frozen in time, as though the world around them had disappeared. It was a moment beyond words, a connection that transcended species and years, leaving only love and unbreakable bonds. Olivia quietly reached for her camera but stopped herself. She realized not every moment needed to be documented. Some moments were meant to be cherished as memories, not captured through a lens. Ethan and Kendra stayed close, their hands touching, as if reliving every memory they had shared. For Ethan, it was nothing short of a miracle, the miracle he had dreamed of for 12 long years. Standing there in the forest, he knew their bond had never been broken. Kendra was still Kendra, not just a gorilla but a part of his heart and soul. Ethan Carter stood still, his hands still clasped in Kendra's, as if letting go would make this miraculous moment vanish like a dream. But Kendra, with the calm and commanding presence of a fully grown silverback, didn't seem in a hurry. She gazed deeply into his eyes, her dark, intelligent eyes filled with recognition, memory, and something Ethan could only describe as reassurance. A profound sense of peace washed over him, as though the years apart had never existed. Kendra gently released his hand and let out a deep, resonant sound, almost like an invitation. Then, she turned and began walking slowly, glancing back to make sure Ethan was following her. Ethan looked at Olivia, who was still in awe of what had just happened, and she nodded encouragingly. Together, they followed Kendra, step by step, toward the group of gorillas. As they drew closer, Ethan could see the other members of Kendra's family. Young gorillas played energetically, tugging on branches and chasing one another through the underbrush. Larger adults lounged nearby, calmly observing their surroundings. To Ethan's amazement, none of them seemed defensive or alarmed by his presence. He realized Kendra had sent a clear message to them. He was not a threat. A young gorilla, perhaps no more than a year old, curiously approached Ethan. His wide, inquisitive eyes studied him, his head tilting slightly as if trying to figure out who he was. Ethan crouched low, making himself appear less intimidating, and kept his movements slow and deliberate. The young gorilla edged closer, his tiny hand reaching out to touch Ethan's shoe. A soft chuckle escaped Ethan's lips. There was something magical about being welcomed by the next generation of Kendra's family. Kendra sat nearby, observing everything with a serene demeanor. The other young gorillas, inspired by their companion's curiosity, began approaching Ethan as well. One playfully tugged at his backpack, while another tentatively reached out to touch his hand. The group seemed entirely at ease, a rarity in human-gorilla interactions in the wild. "She's allowing this to happen," Olivia whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief. Silverbacks are usually fiercely protective of their families, especially around outsiders. But she's encouraging them to interact with you. This defies everything we know. Ethan didn't respond. He was lost in the moment, savoring each gentle touch from the young gorillas, his heart swelling with emotion. It wasn't just Kendra welcoming him. It was her entire family. This reinforced his belief that their bond had never truly been severed. As the young gorillas continued to play around him, Ethan felt a large hand rest gently on his shoulder. Turning, he saw Kendra standing beside him, her gaze soft yet intense, as if she were trying to communicate something words could never convey. Suddenly, Kendra reached out, using her fingers to wipe away the tears that had unknowingly fallen down Ethan's cheeks. The gesture left Ethan utterly speechless. In that instant, he felt a connection not just of memory but of deep, unspoken affection. "Kendra," he choked out her name, unsure of what else to say. She simply continued to gaze at him, then let out another low, soothing sound, a sound of comfort and understanding. Kendra's actions didn't stop there. She bent down and gently touched Ethan's backpack, as though curious about what he had brought with him. When he opened it and pulled out a small cloth he had once used to swaddle her as a baby, Kendra sniffed it for a moment before delicately placing it down. The gesture wasn't just recognition, it was acknowledgement, a silent way of saying she remembered. Olivia stood a few steps away, utterly captivated by the scene unfolding before her. "This behavior defies everything we know about wild gorillas," she murmured. "This isn't science anymore. This is something far beyond it. This is emotion." Ethan glanced at Olivia, his eyes still glistening with tears. "You're right," he said softly. "Sometimes, science can't explain everything. Some things can only be felt with the heart." Kendra stayed close to Ethan, occasionally placing her hand on his shoulder or playfully nudging the young gorillas as they explored their curiosity. Every one of her actions radiated tenderness and affection, as if she were trying to make up for the 12 years they had been apart. For Ethan, it was as if his heart was being healed all over again. He hadn't just found Kendra. He had rediscovered a vital part of himself, the part that had long ached with the absence of their bond. Olivia, despite her scientific background, couldn't help but feel deeply moved by what she was witnessing. She set her notebook aside, realizing that not every moment needed to be documented or analyzed. Some moments, like this one, were meant to be lived and cherished as the most beautiful memories life could offer. As the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow over the forest, Ethan sat with Kendra and her family, enveloped in a sense of peace. This wasn't just a reunion. It was a testament to the power of love and connection that transcends all boundaries. In that moment, Ethan knew that no matter where life took him, the bond between him and Kendra would always endure, unbreakable and eternal. As the sun dipped behind the mountains of Volcanoes National Park, casting the forest in golden hues, Ethan Carter knew the time to say goodbye had come. His heart felt heavy as he looked at Kendra, the gorilla he had loved like family, now a fully grown silverback and a strong leader. He knew this miraculous reunion could not last forever. But as his eyes met Kendra's deep, soulful gaze, Ethan felt the unbroken bond between them, one that no amount of time could erase. Kendra moved closer to him, her steps slow and deliberate. She stopped in front of Ethan, lifting her gaze to meet his with a tenderness that he would never forget. Then, in an unexpected gesture, Kendra leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his chest. Ethan froze for a moment, feeling as though the world had gone silent. This was the ultimate sign of trust in the gorilla world, a gesture silverbacks reserved only for their closest family members. Ethan's heart swelled with emotion. He gently placed his hand on her back, silently thanking her for this extraordinary gift, a profound expression of love and trust. "Thank you for remembering me," Ethan whispered, his voice trembling. "Thank you for showing me that love and kindness can transcend everything." Kendra let out a low, comforting sound, as if to respond. Then, she slowly pulled away, turning to rejoin her family. Ethan stood still, watching her figure disappear into the forest, his heart filled with pride and sorrow. He knew this wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of a new journey, not just for him but for the generations of orphan gorillas that would benefit from Kendra's legacy. Back in the United States, Ethan returned with a clear mission: to ensure that the story of him and Kendra would not just remain a heartwarming tale but create tangible impact. He partnered with the Gorilla Ridge Rescue Center, where he had once worked, to develop a new rehabilitation program called the Kendra Protocol. This method focused on building emotional bonds between humans and orphaned gorillas, especially during the critical early days after their loss. Ethan knew that food, medicine, and a safe environment weren't enough to heal them. It was love, patience, and genuine connection that made the difference. His experience with Kendra became the foundation for this approach. He believed that only when orphan gorillas felt loved and trusted could they truly heal and become strong enough to return to the wild. The Kendra Protocol quickly became a gold standard in wildlife conservation and rehabilitation. Rescue centers around the world adopted the approach, leading not only to higher survival rates but also to gorillas returning to the wild with better mental health, ready to integrate into their natural habitats. The story of Ethan and Kendra spread far and wide, resonating beyond the scientific community. At international conservation conferences, Ethan was often invited as a keynote speaker, sharing the tale of his bond with Kendra as a symbol of love and connection that transcends all boundaries. Photos of Kendra placing her hand on his or wiping his tears became iconic images of compassion's power. Their story inspired not only scientists but also the general public, fostering greater awareness and care for wildlife preservation. Articles, TV programs, and even documentaries about Ethan and Kendra's reunion captivated millions worldwide. But for Ethan, the recognition wasn't what mattered most. It was the message their story carried. He often closed his talks with a profound question: if a gorilla can remember love and kindness after 12 years, what does this tell us about the power of connection between humans and animals? The question left audiences in reflective silence. Ethan believed the relationship between humans and animals wasn't just coexistence. It was an invisible thread woven with respect, compassion, and the ability to understand one another on the deepest levels. If Kendra, a fully grown silverback living in the harshness of the wild, could remember love and kindness after 12 years, it proved that emotions were a universal language shared by all living beings on Earth. Years later, after retiring, Ethan dedicated much of his time to writing books and advocating for wildlife. He knew he was only a small part of a much larger story, a story about life, kindness, and breaking barriers between species, but he was proud to have left a legacy, not only in conservation but also in the hearts of those who heard the story of him and Kendra. And somewhere, deep in the lush forests of Rwanda, Kendra continued to lead her family, a strong and wise leader with a heart once healed by love. Her story with Ethan remained a timeless reminder that no matter how different we are, love and connection are the strongest ties between humans and nature.